All right, then, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I go by the name of King Von Jr. And without further ado, I definitely want to go. Definitely want to go into to my all-time greatest rankings, and I'm going to do a series about this, especially with this being the NBA Finals, and with this being the 75th anniversary and whatnot. And without further ado, of course, for those that are that they're watching by way of YouTube. Of course, you can follow me. Follow my subscribe to the YouTube page at Von Resper Jr. So that as my thing is there's certain certain content that that I want to put on that I want to have recorded on YouTube, and especially when it comes to especially when it comes to like the all time. Greatest top 10 list. I certainly wanted to do something about that, and of course with that, of course without further ado, I definitely want to go into my top 10 point guards list. And so my criteria when it comes to ranking these lists comes down to a number of things. Obviously, obviously championship caliber. Just individual brilliance, dominance at your position, accolades. You know what I mean? Not just team accolades, but also even individual accolades. The imprint that you left on the game. You know what I mean? Just all those major overall historical points. So just in regards to if anything, the more excuse me, sorry about that, the more that you have when it comes to those checks, the higher that you are when it comes to these rankings. And of course I'm going to go from 10 to 1. So at number 10, I would say that this that this is a very historic figure. His name is definitely been has certainly been in the public lately, and for different reasons. And of course, number 10, this may be sort of a kind of a polarizing pick, just because of generational reasons, if you will. But at the same time, I'm someone who likes to acknowledge and honor the legends, of our game that that paved the way for what this game has become today. And so that this figure, even though he plays for my arch rival team, I still have to give credit. Actually, you know what? Sorry about that. Let me slow down. So of course, rather at number 10, one of those figures I'm gonna bring up. Well, actually, you know what? Like I said, I'm gonna save the other one for a little bit later. But but of course, starting off with number 10 will have to be none other than Walt Clyde Frazier. So you can say, he's a pioneer, in his own aspect, because of the fact that Frazier was, of course, it's a two-time NBA champion. He was, and if anything, he was the general of that New York Knicks 70s, championship run, championship era. The closest thing that they have, if you will, sort of to a dynasty. Not so much of a dynasty, but but it's like, by those standards at that time, that there weren't really a lot of dynasty caliber teams, dynasty caliber sort of play, if you will. That this is kind of like when the NBA was sort of making their transition out of that post Bill Russell kind of era, and so if anything, that those Knicks were pretty much the bridge team of the 70s, if you will. So so of course I definitely have to for me, let me slow down. I'll definitely have to add a Walt Frazier in there, just because of how pivotal he was, in terms of what he meant to the game culturally, what he meant to the city of New York. So as far as that, and you can make a very strong argument. You could make a very strong argument that he was pretty much the best player on the Knicks team, even though Willis Reed was the Finals MVP for both those championships, and he was he was the league MVP. But next in line, not too far behind that, like I said, Clyde Frazier, certainly right there. And when it comes to the greatest Knicks, just when it comes to ultimate figureheads, obviously you have Patrick Ewing along with Willis Reed and Walt Frazier. For me, that's like the top three. If you were to have a Knicks Mount Rushmore, You know what I mean? I guess pretty much as far as that, the fourth probably like Earl of Pearl or something. But if anything, just for Walt Frazier, what he meant to the game, what he meant to the Knicks, what he meant to the city of New York, pre Patrick Ewing, if you will, and just for that, I have to, just for me, I have to, I'll have to put him at number 10. And and if anything, this list, just like any, is not very easy whatsoever. There was a lot of wrestling back and forth with it. So so of course in that aspect, like I said, Walt Frazier would be number 10. Number 9, as I've mentioned before, like I said, that this figure is very polarizing for several reasons, for many different reasons. I know his name's been out in the public recently, thanks to good old Mr. JJ Redick. In regards to of course, in regards to JJ Redick's clap back at Chris Mad Dog Russo for what he said about Draymond Green. And so I applaud JJ for shutting down Mad Dog's narrative, whatever, but at the same time, to take a shot at one entire generation of players that shaped the game. They were the original building blocks for what we see now. Now, granted, today's game, of course, is bigger, stronger, more advanced, and everything like that. Better athletes, better, better technology. Better, medical equipment, benefits, and everything like that. Whatever, all these different advantages. But at the same time, you cannot fault the players of from before, because they just used what they had at that time. So it's not their fault that they didn't have didn't have all the same resources that we have today. So with that being said, I definitely have to give respect to this particular player. And and once again, like I said, he was certainly a pioneer, especially when it came to no look passes, and everything like that. And so so he was somebody who was a precursor to the likes of guys like Pete Maravich, Magic Johnson, Steve Nash, and so on and so forth. And of course, I'm referring to none other than Bob Cousy himself, aka the Hardwood Houdini. I think that's what his nickname was. So Cousy, so of course Cousy was a 6-time NBA champion. He was a former league MVP in 1957, which was actually the first year that the Celtics won the championship. You know what I mean? And so so of course with that, he of course, not only that, but he was also a 13-time of course, a multi-time NBA All-Star. He of course, he was an All-Star game MVP. So of course he made multiple all NBA first teams and everything like that. And so of course he made of course, not only did he make the top 50 list, but also the top 75 list, and for good reason. And so and like I said, when it came to when it came to the original superstars, guys that were extremely popular, Cousy was definitely in that conversation for that particular time. You know what I mean? So let's just put things in context, in terms of what Cousy meant to his generation, as well as just historically. So now, granted, we look, of course, when we look back at a lot of Cousy stuff, does it age well? Not really. But at the same time, I also respect Cousy for standing up for his generation and clapping back the way that he did, with a lot of dignity, with a lot of honor, and a lot of respect. And the names that he didn't name, such as his teammate Bill Russell, others like of course, other stars at the time like Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, Jerry West, so on and so forth. A lot of those guys were on that top 75 team, the same top 75 team that has the likes of Jordan, Magic, Kobe, LeBron, KD, CP3, whatever. That same top 75 team has those guys on there. So with that being said, of course, with that being said, like I said, I have to give credit where credit's due. So Cousy's at number 9. Number 8 and 7, kind of a toss up for me. Number 8 for me, I would have to go with Jason Kidd. And like I said, this is definitely a toss up. Because of the fact that Kidd was a great playmaker, um, excellent defender, and and he was very instrumental when it came. Of course, he was the lead cause of why those Nets teams made it to back-to-back finals appearances. In the midst of a very questionable, a very questionable, Eastern Conference at the time. But without Jason Kidd, those Nets would not be the team that they were. But of course, but of course, like of course, one of Kidd's biggest flaws, obviously, of course, even for the modern era, was his shooting percentage. It was pretty much the same type of criticism that we could look at somebody like Kuzi, from that time. But of course, the thing about Kidd was that no matter where he went, he found a way to make his teams better. And eventually, he did win a championship, but this was at the twilight of his career. Of course, this is at the time this is at the time that he went back to, of course, at the time that he went back to the Mavericks. Of course, by the time, by the time he came back, they were a completely different team. This time Dirk Nowitzki, had elevated and became the franchise player and became the face of that team. But of course, but of course, by that point, like I said, J Kidd was a shell of himself. But at the same time, like I said, I would say like that, like I said, just because of Jason Kidd's playmaking, especially when it came to defense, he certainly had the advantage over the guy that had ahead of him at number 7. And I'm going to transition to that, and that is none other than Steve Nash. And Steve Nash, I would say, was the more updated version of Bob Cousy, minus the championships, though. And so, and the thing that I'll say like this: the thing that holds Steve Nash up on this list, obviously, those 2 MVP awards, 2 of the, let's just say, more controversial MVP awards, which I certainly believe should have possibly, should have gone to certain other players, certain guy with the Lakers, but that's another time for certain Black Mamba named Kobe, but that's another topic for another day. But with that being said, considering the fact that Nash obviously still stands as a 2-time MVP, and also because of his superior playmaking skills compared to Jason Kidd, and his superior offensive repertoire when it comes to Jason Kidd and what he did for that Phoenix Suns team. You know what I mean? So, in regards to him being the general, being the captain, if you will, of course, when it comes to Suns franchise, you can make a very strong case for him being the GOAT when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. You know what I mean? So, obviously up there with, obviously up there with the likes of someone like Charles Barkley. So Steve Nash, when it comes to what he meant for the Suns, he definitely has a great conversation for that. Now, however, his Achilles heel was certainly his defense, as we all know. But of course, at the same time, just for what Nash meant to his decade, what he meant to his generation, is certainly nothing to overlook. So, with that being said, Steve Nash is number 7 when it comes to greatest point guards. At number 6, this is another sort of polarizing figure when it comes to our generation. There's a lot of debates on where he resides when it comes to greatest point guards. You have people that put him in the top 5, top 10, some outside the top 10 for whatever reason. But one thing is for sure, he certainly finds a way to make whatever team he goes to a contender in some way, shape or form. However, his Achilles heel would be his injuries and his and the way that him and his team collapse when they have 2-0 leads, especially when it came to last year's finals. They were up 2-0, and obviously we all know what happened. We all know the end result of that, with the way that Greek Freak Giannis and the Bucks ran the table on them with 4 straight wins, and also Of course, just recently when the Suns ran into Luca, how they blew a 2-0 lead and just got demolished the way they did, and his and just his previous history of giving up, of giving up 2-0 leads, and like I said, just his history when it comes to just bad timing with injuries and everything like that. But at the same time, he's certainly one of the ambassadors of our generation, a guy who is a stat sheet stuffer all across the board. You know what I mean? So I mean, he's also been an All Star Game MVP. One of the most fundamental point guards of his generation and just of all time, and that is none other than CP3 himself, Chris Paul. And so Chris Paul is one of those guys. Like I said, he's a guy who makes others around him better to a certain extent. He's a guy who knows how to fill up the stat sheet all across the board when it comes to points, assists, steals, this, that, and the third, so on and so forth. And he's certainly been climbing up the ranks when it comes to all-time assist leaders. But but of course, like I said once again, because of his playoff shortcomings, because I don't want to sound like a broken record, like obviously injuries, you know what I mean, and just things like that, and like I said, there's so many people are kind of torn on how to evaluate his career. There are those who say he's underrated. There are those who say he's overrated. They don't know really where to put him historically. Sounds very familiar to a guy that I'm gonna mention a little bit later. But with that being said, Chris Paul is number 6. And like I said, he's certainly a catalyst when it comes to social change, in regards to the NBA, for today's generation, everything like that. So I definitely applaud him, in that aspect. And he's certainly, I think he's now like the ambassador, like HBCU ambassador for the NBA or whatever. You know what I mean? So of course, like I said, Chris Paul, symbolically is very important, very significant to the landscape of today's NBA. Like I said, regardless, pretty much regardless of how you feel about him and everything like that. Like I said, Chris Paul, for today's generation, is a very pivotal character of this time. And number 5, the NBA's all-time assist leader, none other than John Stockton. And and of course, Stockton was certainly the point man for those Utah Jazz teams in the 90s. Him and of course, the 1-2 punch of him and the mailman Karl Malone, and of course their biggest kryptonite for back-to-back seasons was none other than number 23 himself, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. So they ran into their red and black locomotive in Chicago, with the 23 on it, and that just derailed them, consecutively. And so it's just that, and excuse me, sorry about that. And so because of that, like I said, and because of that, they became, one of the many notches on Jordan's belt. They became. Not one of they became two of the many notches on Jordan's belt during his reign of dominance, when he had when he had the NBA's Infinity Gauntlet and had the league in a stranglehold. And so so unfortunately, Stockton and Malone were among the many victims of Jordan's dominance, and they became casualties as a result. And so I think that's a big reason why they're not really recognized, they're not really mentioned by that. But but at the same time, but also of course also at the same time, for those, of course at the same time, I'll say, according to basketball Twitter, there are other reasons why they're not mentioned like that, if you will, some certain off the court stuff, if you will, but we're gonna leave that behind. But but of course, Stockton recently has become, let's just say, more noteworthy for the things that he said off the court. in regards to the pandemic and his stance on COVID and everything like that. I think Jerry West said it best during that, during that NBA top 75 draft or whatever. So, you know what I mean? So, but the thing is, I'll say like this, all that to the side, all that, all that stuff to the side at the same time, Stockton is still the NBA's all-time leader in assists by a very wide margin. He was also a member of the 1992, of course, NBA Dream, of course, the 1992 Dream Team. So, and of course, even of course, with that, there was a lot of controversy between him and this other NBA legend, a rather controversial figure in his own right, and number four, and that is the leader of the Bad Boys, Zeke himself, none other than Isaiah Thomas. Two-time, of course, he's a two-time NBA champion. He's also a Finals MVP, a two-time All-Star Game MVP, a 12-time NBA All-Star, and of course, what he's most known for are the victories that he had over the likes of Magic, Bird, and Jordan in that bridge period when the NBA was making the transition from the Magic and Bird era to the Jordan era. And the Bad Boys, like I said, they were in between that. They were the guys that were breaking up the party, if you will, and just holding that that's like pretty much standing in the gap, if you will, and sort of standing in the gap, if you will, and kind of like prolonging Jordan's eventual ascent, eventual rise to the NBA throne. And so it was up to of course, it was up to the Bad Boys to be the ones to be the thorn in his side, be the ultimate villains to him. If anything, I would say that they were the greatest dance partners, and Isaiah was the ultimate catalyst for that. And I'll say it like this: and the thing about Isaiah was that even in a loss, he was still able to look like a champion. And what I mean by that, most famously, is Game 6 of the 1988 NBA Finals against the Lakers, when he dropped 25 points in the third quarter on one leg, on a bad ankle. Unfortunately, the Pistons lost because of a phantom foul that they called against Lambert, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar made both free throws. Of course, the Lakers were going to win. Isaiah was out for Game 7, and the Lakers will go on to close out Game 7 and ultimately win. Win their fifth and last championship of that decade. But at the same time, Isaiah, was certainly, he like I said, he was certainly the heart, the face of the team. You know what I mean? He's the one that the Bad Boys built their system around. He's the one that they rallied around. And and once again, as I've said before, when it came to controversy, this was certainly one of the more controversial figures on the list. Obviously because of his beef with Jordan. Like I said, most famously his beef with Jordan stemming from his jealousy. Stemming from the jealousy that he had over Michael when it came to Chicago. Obviously, of course, that led to the freeze out. That led to like I said, just all the bad blood. And when it comes to that Bulls Pistons rivalry, how the Pistons held the Bulls back for 3 straight years before Chicago, finally got. Before Chicago finally got over the hump, finally got over the mountain, and finally conquered them. And with that being said, after that loss, with the infamous refusal to shake Jordan's hand, and so that that was certainly certainly a strike against him. The stuff with Magic and Bird, just overall, like I said, he in many ways he's a very controversial figure, and so that in a lot of ways was were certain things that that tarnished his perception, if you will. But at the same time, make no mistake about it, Isaiah Thomas left a very indelible mark on the NBA in and of itself. He was a precursor to what we see in guys like Allen Iverson, Chris Paul, and so on and so forth. So many other guys. So he was very influential in that sense. And so of course, with of course, with that being said, the number three greatest point guard of all time, the all-time leader in three-pointers made, three-time NBA champion, possibly, he's looking forward to adding his fourth championship, with this series right now. He's also two-time league MVP. He's also been, he's also been an All-Star Game MVP, multi-time All-Star. Also a member of the top 75, just like with Isaiah just like with Isaiah Thomas and all the other point guards I've named. And this is, and for me, and even though I mentioned Chris Paul, but this is the guy that's the best point guard of this current generation, and that is none other than Splash Brother number one, Steph Curry. And like I said, and just off of his accolades alone, just off of his merit, off of his playmaking, off of his, and just pretty much in the way that he changed the game, with the way that he's added to the game, in regards to in regards to 3-point shooting. So so if anything, the NBA was already moving to the direction of of a more perimeter game. It's just that Steph built, just capitalized on that, and just took the 3-point shot to a whole nother dimension that's never been before. And what makes Steph so important is that this is the first time that we've seen a championship team built around a 3-point specialist. Usually 3-point specialists were not guys that you built teams around. Steph is the first, Steph is one of the first ones, at least, that you build a dynasty around. Just let me just put that disclaimer out there. Just in terms of players, that in terms of 3-point shooters that you build a dynasty around. And of course, and the reason why I say that is because obviously when you look at the 2011 Dallas Mavericks, you look at somebody like Dirk Nowitzki, who was the greatest stretch four of all time, 3-point specialist and shooting specialist, period. But Steph, like I said, takes a 3-point shot to a whole different level, even beyond that of Dirk. But but of course, this is specifically in regards to point guards. So like I say, he's certainly a revolutionary player for today's generation. For those that weren't privy to your Magic Johnsons, Isaiah Thomas, so on and so forth. So of course, in that regard, Steph has certainly been an ambassador for the game in more ways than one. And of course, with that being said, he falls at number 3 on this list. Number 2 on this list, of course, number 2 on this list is the original triple double, the guy who was responsible for spearheading the NBA Players Association, none other than Mr. All Around himself. I would say, like, this, the original sort of like big point guard, if you will, 6'5". This is the Big O himself, Oscar Robertson. And so it's and the thing about it is that I would say, like, so now the thing about Oscar is that I think there are a lot of people who who are very torn between where like they're very torn between how they perceive him, pretty much like torn between as far as like how they perceive his legacy, in regards to where he ranks historically among point guards. The thing is, some people don't want to rank him too high, just because of the era that he played in. But at the same time, you can't rank him too low either. Really just because of how pivotal he was to the NBA. So of course, Oscar won a championship in 1971. That time with the Milwaukee Bucks, led by Lou Alcindor, who's now Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And and the thing is, long before that, Oscar was the first overall pick in 1960. He was also, of course, he was also the Rookie of the Year. And so of course, sorry about that. Of course, like I said, he was an NBA champion. He was the 1964 MVP. He was a 12-time All-Star, a 3-time All-Star Game MVP, 9-time All-NBA First Team, a 2-time All-NBA Second Team selection. He's a 6-time. Of course, he led the league in assists 6 times. So of course, like I said, he was definitely a pioneer. He was certainly a building block for what the like one of the many sort of like a pioneer, revolutionary building block players. Let me go and sort of slow down, kind of like run across my words. But but like I said, Oscar, was someone who really stood up for players' rights, stood up for a lot of things socially, in terms of social change and everything like that. So so of course, in fact, that was one of the earlier players that a lot of people compared LeBron to. Of course, not only did they compare LeBron to Oscar, but they've also compared LeBron to this next guy that I'm about to name, who I believe is obvious when it comes to greatest point guards of all time. You can make a very strong case, even when make a very strong case for him, even when it comes to the greatest Laker of all time. This guy is, for me, is the face of the '80s. Even though he had his dance partner, Larry Bird, but at the same time, because this guy had the advantage when it came to hardware, when it came to their matchup, when it came to Finals MVPs, and just his overall importance, and and the thing is, with the way this guy's name still transcends even now, and that is none other than 6'9" out of Michigan State, first overall pick in 1979, Earvin Magic Johnson. And what else can you say about him that hasn't been said? Obviously, as I mentioned, he was the first overall pick. And of course, he was an NCAA champion. But of course, his accomplishments speak for themselves. He was a 5-time NBA champion: 1980, 82, 85, 87, 88. 3-time NBA Finals MVP: 1980, 82, and 87. 3-time Most Valuable Player: 1987, 89, and 90. 12-time. Of course, he's a 12-time NBA All-Star, 1980, and then from 82 through 92. Of course he was a 2-time All-Star Game MVP in 90 and 92. He was a 9-time All NBA First Team selection from 83 to 91, All NBA Second Team selection in 82, NBA All Rookie Team in 1980, 4-time NBA assist leader from 83, 84, 86, 87, 2-time steals leader in 1981, 82, and of course he also won the J. Walter Kennedy Citizenship Award in 1992. Of course he also won the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2019. He made the NBA's top 50 and 75 anniversary teams as well. And so and the thing about it is that, like I said, when it comes to the guys who are like ultimate cheat codes, Magic is in that conversation. When it comes to point guards, there's no question about it. He's the ultimate cheat code because of his size, because of his vision when it comes to his basketball IQ, the way that he made other players better, the way that he brought, the way that he brought new life to Kareem's career. As far as that, and just the way that he elevated somebody like James Worthy to become a top 50 and 75, top 50, 75 player as well. The way he made others like Michael Cooper, Byron Scott, everybody else better. And and like I said, just the way that he elevated that team and elevated the Lakers and turned them into the brand, ultimately turn them into a brand. And so if anything, for those that that want to that want to get another glimpse of Magic Johnson, for what it's worth, of course, for those that haven't seen Winning Time, I suggest that you go check that out as well. As well as any other sort of like material that you can find. Like I said, Magic, was spectacular. He was one of a kind. He was one of one, a once in a generation, type of point guard, type of player. Just one of the NBA's greatest ambassadors of all time. He was also a member of that dream team as well. Of course, one of the main captains along with Jordan and Bird. And so like I said, you cannot mention greatest point guards without Magic Johnson. To me, he is, as great as Steph Curry is, Magic for me is the end all be all of point guards. Enough said. So that is my, of course, so that is my top 10. Of course, number 10, Walt Frazier. Number 9, Bob Cousy. Number 8, Jason Kidd. Number 7, Steve Nash. 6, Chris Paul. 5, John Stockton. 4, Isaiah Thomas. 3, Steph Curry. 2, Oscar Robertson, and 1, Magic Johnson. Enough said.